Hello friends, and welcome to episode 2 of the Bonfire. Trying something a little different today, and we're going to do a double feature. So first we're going to talk about Vordt of the Boreal Valley, who is the second main boss that we encounter. And then I will be eating my words, and we will be talking about the curse-rotted Greatwood. Vordt really doesn't have enough interesting lore to warrant his own video, and the curse-rotted Greatwood was really the only other early game boss that I could think of that also didn't have a lot of lore. I considered the possibility of doing Vordt and an NPC for this double feature, but I really don't like the idea of mixing bosses and NPCs because eventually I would like to be able to categorize the videos into bosses and NPCs. That's my little intro, and without further ado, let's get into the lore of Vordt of the Boreal Valley, Pontiff Sullivan's prized guard dog. So, after defeating Udex Gundyr and traversing the undead-infested High Wall of Lothric, we encounter our next opponent, the Dancer. Unless you're a fan of getting your nuts crushed, which personally I'm not, you won't be fighting the Dancer until much later in the game. So if you play the game according to intended progression, your next foe will be Vordt of the Boreal Valley. Vordt, in the service of Pontiff Sullivan, guards the entrance to the undead settlement, which we'll need to access in order to begin our journey to Irithyll. But who exactly is Vordt? And why is his ass so fat? Unfortunately, I can only answer one of these questions, as trying to answer the other would require an understanding of Miyazaki's mind that would cause irreparable damage to my psyche. To fully understand Vordt, we must first briefly discuss Pontiff Sullivan, the ex-Darkmoon Knight who is just effeminate enough that I feel comfortable calling him a twink. I'll more thoroughly explain Pontiff Sullivan's background in his episode, but for the sake of keeping this as focused on Vordt as possible, I'll just say that Pontiff Sullivan is a serious asshole that rivals even the Lothrics when it comes to brutality. Though we know little of Vordt's story before he became intertwined with Pontiff Sullivan, it is fairly well agreed upon that Vordt was a knight in Irithyll who was granted a ring with tremendous power that turns him into the beast that we ultimately face. The description of this ring granted to Vordt by Pontiff Sullivan reads, quote, "Bewitched ring that Pontiff Sullivan bestowed upon his knights. Knights who peer into the black orb are lured into battles of death, transformed into frenzied beasts. No wonder the Pontiff only provides these rings to those dispatched to foreign lands." Unquote. Emma, the High Priestess of Lothric Castle, refers to Vordt as a dog, a role which he fills well. Vordt acts as a guard dog, protecting against those that would try to begin their journey to Irithyll, which is where his master, Pontiff Sullivan, resides. Vordt, who was once a noble knight, was transformed into a foul beast, fated to serve as Sullivan's loyal pet as long as the flame persists. So as I said earlier, I really don't think that there's much to talk about when it comes to Vordt. While the lore that we do have about him has all the makings of a perfect tragedy, there's just not a lot there for me to work with when trying to come up with a theory. So I thought it best to just leave it at the widely agreed upon lore. And I do know that I skipped over the fact that we do see what is believed to be Vordt and the Dancer walking in Irithyll, but I really just think that it'd be better to save that for the Dancer's episode because her lore I think is just a lot more compelling and I just like her a lot more as a character. And now that we've covered Vordt, let's move on to my favorite boss in the game, the curse-rotted Greatwood. So after making our way through the undead settlement and, if you're gay, joining the Mound Makers, you will encounter the overgrown tree spirit known as the curse-rotted Greatwood. There is much mystery around what exactly this tree is, and what caused it to be in this overgrown and mutated state. The soul of the rotted Greatwood offers us a little insight, reading, quote, "Ever since its establishment, all manner of curses have managed to seep into the undead settlement. The worst of them were sealed away inside a spirit tree, but eventually the curses took their toll." Unquote. While this description helps to explain how exactly this tree came to be the home of so many curses, there are still questions left unanswered, one of the most pressing being, what exactly is a spirit tree? Mentions of spirit trees are few and far between throughout the entire Dark Souls series, but it is worth noting that when they are mentioned, they always seem to be filling the role of protector or helper. In Dark Souls 2, there is an item called the Grand Spirit Tree Shield, whose description reads, quote, shield of the blue spirit tree that is said to possess divine powers, appears in the allegory of Quela, god of dream, and can deflect spells by parrying. Once there was a boy who was easily frightened, until the talking tree of Dream World transformed itself into a shield to protect him." Unquote. The Greatwood also seems to be filling the role of protector for the undead settlement, as it consumes the curses that would pose the greatest threat to its inhabitants. But what exactly happened? What led the spirit tree to become not only hostile, but also gross? I think that the answer to this lies within the Greatwood itself, literally within the Greatwood. Upon death, the Greatwood drops the transposing kiln, which we need to give to Ludleth in order to allow for soul transposition. The description of the kiln reads, quote, "This kiln can transpose twisted souls to craft special items with their concentrated essence, deemed forbidden by those unable to make proper use of it." Unquote. And on the topic of transposing souls, Ludleth says, quote, "Before I was a Lord of Cinder, I was a student of transposition, the process of extracting and coalescing the essence of a soul, a forbidden art that once left a foul stain upon Corlin's honor." Unquote. If we use the kiln to transpose the Greatwood soul, we can choose between the Hollowslayer greatsword and Arster's spear. The greatsword was, quote, "used for a lifetime by a masked knight, harbors the fears that lurk within the mind of Hollows, and is particularly effective against them." Unquote. So for the Hollows that reside within the undead settlement, this weapon is likely regarded as being especially terrible. And as for Arster's spear, its original wielder, Earl of Kareem, who is also known as Earl Arster the Impaler, is a man shrouded in rumors of evil and curses. He is touted as being the creator of the bite rings, think blood bite ring, curse bite ring, flesh bite ring, etc. A set of rings that are believed to have been made using very unsavory methods. The fact that both of these weapons and the transposing kiln itself are tied to such evil gives us a glimpse into the magnitude of curses that the Greatwood was actually sealing away. I don't think it's a stretch to theorize that while the Greatwood's mission may have initially been a benevolent one, it was eventually worn down and taken over by all of the curses that it was housing. During Phase 2 of the Greatwood fight, fleshy white arms sprout from the tree and can do large amounts of damage if you don't pay attention to them. Much later in the game, once we've reached the Grand Archives, we see very similar arms emerging from the bookshelves. I don't believe that this similarity in design is a coincidence, but rather a consistent look at how an abundance of curses can physically manifest. If you fail to keep the wax on your head while traversing the archives, these hands will inflict curse on you, symbolizing their connection to this affliction. The curse-rotted Greatwood, unable to withstand the power of all of the curses that it had consumed, eventually succumbed to them and became the grotesque monster that we end up fighting. Okay, so that was my Greatwood theory, and I really do mean theory. Just like Vordt, there's not a lot to work with when it comes to curse-rotted Greatwood. I was able to find a little more for the tree than I was for Vordt, and I think I was able to put together at least a semi-compelling, semi-coherent story to go along with him. So to all of the Greatwood lovers out there, and that's not meant to be an innuendo, but it definitely could be, I do kind of take back what I said about him. I still think he's disgusting, I still think he's gross, I still think his fight sucks, but his story is kind of interesting, so I give you that. So that was episode 2. Feel free to leave any suggestions in the comments, and I am really interested in hearing what you guys think about Vordt. I don't know if I just really missed a lot of stuff or what, but I was struggling to put together a story when it came to him. But I'd love to read anything that you guys have either found about him or come up with. Thank you for watching, and until next time, don't go hollow.